Hi, I'm Monty Haas.
And I'm Martine Bernard.
And this is Words That Cook,
Parenting with Children's Books.
It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us, a train whistle blew long and low, like a sad, sad song.
Monty and I are here in a library, and we're sharing some of our favorite stories with each other to highlight this show's theme of reading relationships.
All of our guest chefs today use books and stories as opportunities to share ideas, build communication bridges, and find exciting ways to relate to the world.
And later in the program, we'll have New York Times best-selling author Joe Finder and his family.
He'll tell us how reading aloud with his 10-year-old daughter made him a better writer.
And we'll learn some tricks from a mom who makes books into friends in her home.
Our first guest, Gary Wallach and his 5-year-old daughter Marley, join me at the Bacon Free Library in South Natick.
And Gary and Marley start off by sharing the book Monty's been reading to me, Owl Moon.
Our feet crunched over the crisp snow and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me.
Now it seems to me that you told me a wonderful story about you and Marley around Owl Moon.
I read this book for the first time, when I read it to her for the first time, and I found the end, the last page, the ending of the story to be so touching that I couldn't finish the story. I wept. And she looked up at me, and she didn't quite understand what was going on, and she was maybe a little bit frightened, but she was really concerned, and she put her arm around me and she told me it was okay. And that gave me the courage to finish the story, and we've been reading it and rereading it ever since.
I know you brought another one too.
Yeah.
That happens to relate to an experience that's going on in Marley's life right now.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What happens to her that happened to you recently?
She lost a tooth.
Yeah.
Is that right? She lost a tooth?
Can you show Monty?
Did you lose a tooth? Oh, yeah.
She's about to lose the other one right next to it, too.
Tell us about the story.
Well, it occurred to me one night, I guess it was right before she lost her first tooth, that we had a book that touched on the subject, so we pulled it out, and she was fascinated by it.
Marley, thank you very much for reading with us today. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to talk to your dad here just another minute and let you go over to the rocking chair, okay? All right. Thank you. Obviously, you fostered a bond between the two of you and between Marley and books. Tell us a little bit more about that bond that you fostered between the two of you. How has that grown through books?
Well, it allows us to talk about things out in the world. When we're, for instance, we go for walks at the local Audubon Sanctuary, and we'll talk about the great horned owls that we read about in Owl Moon. We look for wildlife that we've seen in books. We talk about the trees. We talk about the woods. Sometimes there's scary woods in books, as with, Little Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and she talks about the woods and how they can be scary, but then it gives us a chance also to talk about how the woods are beautiful and very lovely and nice to be in. So it gives us things to talk about and ideas to bounce off of each other when we're out in the real world.
One way to really help foster reading relationships with younger kids is to play games with the book that you're reading aloud together.
Lori, Joy, and Honey have a great game idea with the book Noisy Nora.
Honey and I are going to play a game that you may have played before, but not using a book. Usually, can I borrow this? Usually you use an object like this orange, and you hide it in your house. And your child goes looking for it, and when they're going in the wrong direction, you say you're getting colder, and when they go in the right direction, you say you're getting warmer, and when they get it, you say it's hot, hot, hot. So now we're going to play the same game with the picture behind me from Noisy Nora by Rosemary Wells. So let's open this up. Now I'm picking an object, and Honey's going to guess what it is. All right. The yellow plates in the cabinet. Good guess. But that's not it. Choose something else. The milk bottle on top of the red table. Nope, that's not it. You're getting colder. Guess again. The curtains. Good, you're getting warmer. The teapot on top of the table. That's a good guess. You are very hot. Noisy Nora under the table. Yes. Now, it's a part of Noisy Nora. So what part do you think it is? Her ears. Nope, it's not her ears. Her eyes. You're getting warmer. Her nose. You are getting hot, hot, hot. It's right under her nose. Her whiskers. You got it. Hooray. You got the whiskers.
Hey, Martine, how about a little one-on-one to perfect your game?
Well, you know, Monty, only perfect practice makes perfect, just like in reading.
True. That's why the 750 retired senior and volunteer programs around the country train their volunteers to be effective one-on-one reading partners with children in grades 1 through 3.
They had a lot to tell me about building relationships around books. So how many points do I spot you?
When I first went to Manomet School, I found that all of the children were well prepared. They knew the words. And a lot of them also knew how to break the larger words into parts that they understood and then put it together. So the teachers had done an excellent job with training them to read, but to read with understanding and to read with joy. That was my goal.
My son had no desire to read. He was not interested at all, even though I started reading to him when he was probably 6 months old. And my husband builds cars for a hobby, and the only books that I could buy that was of any interest to him at the store were books on building cars, Mustang cars, anything about cars. Yes.
This is a literacy program, and that is our main focus, but in many aspects, that's secondary, and it's the relationships that evolve between our volunteers and between the students, and it's what grows from that. I had one of the children that I was reading to. He would not read anything in the beginning. He just refused. And so I ran into him about a month after the program had ended, and he yelled down the corridor of the Morton School. He yelled down the corridor, "Michael, I'm on chapter 3. Now, to many people, those words, "I'm on chapter 3, really wouldn't mean much, but to me, that was validations of a year's worth of work.
You get a warm, friendly feeling working with this child, and you also learn to discern what their real needs are.
Now, Christine, tell me why you decided to become an RSVP volunteer.
What Summer Reads did for my son last summer was such a good thing that I felt that I needed to give back to the community and go and help someone else's child, because someone helped my little boy learn how to read.
I'm at home with my child. I don't have tons of resources in my community. What can I do to make sure that my child has a foundation?
Communicate, talk, tell stories, listen to kids, ask them to tell stories. There is so much that we need to learn in terms of communicating before we're ready to pick up and read a book. So it's always about talking to children, listening to them, having them tell you maybe in 4 different ways about something that happened. Get them thinking, and then show them what fun it is to read.
If you teach a child to enjoy reading, it will stay with them for the rest of their lives.
When it comes to reading relationships, a good novel can often open the door to some interesting family discussions.
Right. Just as Gary Wallach found with his young daughter Marley, a good book can open the door to the world around you.
Or the door to some family history. Our next guests are school principal Gloria Woods and her 9-year-old daughter Amber. They found that the novel, Because of Winn-Dixie, let Mom share some memories from her own life growing up in the South.
I catch up with them in the library where reading aloud is a part of the school activity.
Hey diddle diddle, the cat in the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such a sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon.
Gloria, as we sit here in your wonderful elementary school, surrounded here in the library by all these wonderful books, tell us why literacy is so important to you, both as a principal and as a mom.
First of all, I had to come to terms with that reading is a social activity, and that you really have to make it interactive. And that's the part that really warmed my heart, is that it really became almost like a conversation between Amber and me. I think the biggest part was being able to read, let Amber express her understanding around what I'd read, and give her an opportunity to read, and then we would talk about it. So we sort of built a partnership around that. There was also some specific skills that I realized that I wanted Amber to learn, such as predicting outcomes in books and being able, you know, to tell and retell her own version of it. And it was such a neat way. I could do it without pencil and paper and being that parent the way I was before, where I would just, you know, with my oldest daughter, I would say, well, let's sit down, let's write something on. What do you think about the prediction? It was just so natural. So I think it's just that whole natural piece of being able to use reading in a fun way, but also use it as a tool to support your child.
Amber, why do you enjoy reading with Mom so much?
Because when we read, we go over what happens, and if we have a difficult word, we go over it and look in the dictionary, and we go over that word so it can build up my vocabulary.
What's your favorite books? Do you have a number of different favorite books, or do you have one favorite book?
Well, I actually have one favorite book, which is Winn-Dixie, because it's a Caldecott book, and it's very fun to read too.
So you're really learning through a book about a fiction book about your mom's history and sharing stories back and forth that way. How do you feel about that?
A little bit strange somehow, and I feel a little happy about it because I can learn more about the history of the book or about the author. Maybe if she lived around in Dixieland, or she could have lived out of the state, maybe her relatives, but my mom could tell me more about the history of the South.
Now, you're obviously an extremely busy woman being a principal of an elementary school. How do you find time in your busy, busy day, raising Amber, running a school, and obviously running a household as well, to find time for books? A lot of parents say, I just don't have time for a book. What would you say to them?
Just take simple things. Go out and take a little box and have a little box of books on the kitchen table, and a little box in the bathroom, and a little box here and there, and just sort of throw them around and see what happens. And it's amazing. I'm saying it's amazing. You know, Amber picks up books, and you know, in the kitchen, there are books, you know, everywhere. And I find that I'm doing the same thing. I might just be humming. I'm in the kitchen, and oh, you know, what is this Amber reading? And then I find myself in it. So I think that whole level of education is so important.
So keeping books out in the open, making sure that they're available in all different places in the house.
Yes.
Then taking time to actually pick them up and peruse them and look through them shows Amber how much reading is important to you.
That's right. And I think too that having the books around in a variety of ways in your home, books, they become part of your family. It's just a natural thing. It's nothing to bump into a book, you know what I'm saying? So it's not staged or anything. It's just that the books are it's just, you know they're welcome.
This is The Giver by Lois Lowry, and I read this book with my dad. It was the last book I read with him. Right now I'm reading a different book called The Thief Lord by Cornelia Funk.
That's Emma, the 10-year-old daughter of best-selling author Joe Finder.
She and her dad.
And Mom Michelle.
Yes, the three of them have built a wonderful relationship using books as the springboard.
In fact, books have given them memories of what they loved to share and remember together.
I asked Joe what it was like being a dad and a writer.
It's funny because when I write first thing in the morning, I try to write for a couple of hours before my daughter Emma gets up, and she will get up, she'll get out of her bedroom very quietly, and she'll sneak up to the computer where I'm working, and all of a sudden I'll feel her hands on my shoulder, and she's watching over my shoulder. And sometimes she kind of just gets into my lap and sits there while I'm writing, and I think, and Emma has helped me actually as a writer, because she'll come up with words, or she'll point out words that are missing, or that maybe are the wrong words, right? But also, what's really interesting as a writer who has a child is that pretty much every night I read to her, and you really learn a lot about how to capture someone's attention. Because if a story is too wordy, it doesn't work. And so I've begun to figure out what kind of books work well for reading out loud. And it also teaches me something about writing, about sort of how to grab people's audience. I mean, I've written 6 books so far, but I'm always learning as a writer. And I really believe that you learn from people who read, and especially from kids, because kids love being read to. They love stories. That's why they're the ideal audience, because when the story is good, they're just fascinated. And Emma will say, "Don't stop there. No, you can't end that chapter there." So I like ending chapters, whether it's something I write or whether it's something I'm reading. I like ending chapters with a cliffhanger, where something's about to happen and you don't know what's going to happen next, right? But also, Emma's a very good audience and a good reader, and she'll sort of think a couple of steps ahead. She'll sort of think, wait a second, I know what's going to happen, and I'll say, what do you think is going to happen? And she'll tell me. And then we'll see if that turns out to be true or not. And are you happier, would you say, when it happens the way you predict, or when it doesn't happen the way you predict?
Sort of both, because, if it's what I guessed, then it might be a little too obvious.
So for children, do you think stories have to be, they have to be entertaining? Do you think they should always say something? Should they be pure entertainment? But it seems like they have to be short and sweet or to the point.
I think that the most important thing is that the child be interested in the story. I think it's much more important than whether a story makes a point, to me.
But it's laying that foundation for the love of reading, as opposed
Yes.
to, well, it has to be the classics, or it has to be morally focused.
I think that reading is as fun as movies, videos, TV, computer. Reading is fun, and telling stories is fun, and hearing stories is fun. And if it's not fun, kids aren't going to do it.
Emma, your dad told me that you read aloud together. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Once I read a book and there was a lot of singing in it, or chanting that the characters did. So I would do the chanting, and Daddy would do all the narration and stuff.
So it's almost like acting it out like theater. So you're actually making your books and your reading experience come alive.
Yeah.
And you know, we also have books that we read a lot when you were younger that we read over and over and over again. Do you remember? And Emma would memorize them. Do you remember some of them, like the Going to Bed book?
Yeah.
Right? Where it's this very simple, sweet book. How does that start? Do you remember? The sun has set not long ago. Now everybody goes below to take a bath in one big tub. with soap all over, scrub, scrub, scrub. We love that book.
Oh, that's great.
And it's very cute little pictures, a couple of lines on each page, and we'd read it and go through it, and Emma and I would say it together. And the last line, do you remember the last line?
The moon is high, the sea is deep, they rock and rock and rock to sleep.
Click and turn off the light.
It's great to see how they treasured those early years of reading aloud together.
Joe and Michelle let us borrow their family album just to see how early it all started. Looks like a tired Joe.
Look at her holding a book at such a young age.
And passing one back to Dad. The two of them sharing a picture book.
Summertime reading.
Look at the glasses.
That hat and those curls and that book.
And relaxing with a book.
So focused. Maybe she's reading aloud.
We know that you parents watching this show are wondering just how you find the time to build these meaningful relationships with so little time in your busy lives. Emma's mom comes to the rescue.
From the beginning, when she wasn't reading and we weren't reading, we were interacting with books as artifacts and turning them and holding them, and she just owned them in a wonderful way, even before the official reading began. Yeah. Excellent. The pictures, the textures of the books, especially Pat the Bunny, which, you know, all children want to play with. Yes, so those are the kinds of things that we did, and we realized we wanted to seize the moment, too. One of the things that I found very liberating, because I know a lot of people would say to me, you know, see how much time you will have to read, right? Because you're so busy doing other, you know, all these other things that have to be done. And I had a memory of reading with my mother, which was that every afternoon she would get us up on the bed and read to us. And my memory is that she read to us for a long, long time. And I mentioned this to my mother when Emma was born. And I said, I hope I'll have the time to really do that for as long as you did. And she looked at me and she was so surprised and said, you know what? It might have been 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes because there were so many other things to do, cooking and cleaning and all of that. And the great message from that is that you don't have to read only when you can look forward to a half hour or longer than that. Those moments last in a child's mind. They really expand.
Now let's review the highlights of today's show. Gary Wallach says, read stories that mirror family life and compare what you read to what you see.
Laura Joy suggests play seek and find games with pictures.
The RSVP volunteers recommend you find books that match your child's interest and listen to kids. Get them thinking and talking.
Gloria Woods and Amber recommend you build a relationship around reading and place books all around the house.
And finally, the Finder family says, interact with books from the start and maintain suspense. Use cliffhangers.
Now, here's Miriam Marichek's recommended Words That Cook book list.
Brought to you with the help of the Cookie Bookie Bears.
For 0 to 3, Book by Christine O'Connell George. And I Love My Daddy Because by Laurel Porter Gaylord. For 3 to 6, The Wednesday Surprise by Eve Bunting. Mr. Potter and Tabby Stir the Soup by Cynthia Ryland. And Noisy Nora by Rosemary Wells. For 6 to 9, Rufus M. by Eleanor Estes. Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge by Mem Fox. And Nicholas at the Library by Hazel Hutchins and Ruth Ahi. And for 9 to 12, The Same Stuff as Stars by Catherine Patterson. and The Giver by Lois Lowry.
For a complete list of books, including those mentioned by our guests today, related activity ideas, and links that will help make reading more fun for your kids, go to our website, wordsthatcook.org.
Now you've got some new ideas to play with, so go and have some fun with Words That Cook.
Parenting with children's books
In your kitchen.